Today, we're going to talk about something that really sticks with you. It's about this one single interaction, an interaction that didn't just change a career, it holds a pretty powerful lesson for all of us. And it all starts with a teenager named Jamal. So, where does this all start? Well, it begins with a young police officer, and it's his memory. We're not talking about stats or dry legal reports here. Nope, this is all about a human connection. And this first meeting, man, on the surface, it seemed so simple. But as you're about to see, it was anything but.
All right, so here are the facts, right off the delinquency report. You've got a 15-year-old kid, the charge, shoplifting. And the reason? Well, it looks like he was just trying to impress his friends. Seems pretty straightforward, peer pressure, trying to look cool. You'd think case closed, right? Just another simple, open and shut juvenile case.
But this is where everything changes. It's that one question, that moment of hesitation, that little flicker of doubt in the officer's mind. It's what challenges that easy label of just bad kid. Is the behavior really the whole story? Or is there something more going on here?
And he could have just filed the paperwork, right? Moved on to the next case. But he didn't. He made a choice. He decided he was going to investigate the person, not just the crime. He just had this gut feeling that something wasn't adding up, and he followed that instinct. He looked past the official report.
And what he found, wow, it just completely reframes the whole situation. See, the shoplifting, that wasn't the real problem. It was a symptom. Turns out Jamal was skipping school, he was bouncing around between relatives' houses, he was barely eating at home. All that disruptive behavior on this record, it was a direct result of all this chaos. What looked like a simple crime was actually a cry for help.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit from Jamal's specific story and look at the bigger picture here. This is about more than just one kid's delinquency report. It's about understanding the science behind why teenagers act the way they do, and the fact that, well, their brains are basically still under construction.
And this right here, this definition is so important. It totally shifts how we think about this stuff. It moves us away from just seeing a kid's actions as, malicious or evil. Instead, it helps us recognize that things like brain development, how they handle their emotions, their environment, all of that plays a huge role. It's not an excuse, for sure, but it is an explanation. So you can really see the two different ways to look at this behavior. On one hand, you've got the criminal intent view, the idea that it's a deliberate choice to do harm. But on the other hand, you have the developmental view, which recognizes that a lot of this behavior comes from confusion, from impulsivity, from their environment. And that second way of thinking, that's the exact shift in perspective that Officer had when he looked at Jamal. And this way of thinking isn't just some abstract psychological theory. It's actually the foundation of our entire juvenile justice system. It's the very reason we treat young offenders differently than we treat adults.
Here's the key takeaway. The whole juvenile justice system is built on one big idea. Young people are still developing, and because of that, they have a much greater capacity for change. So the goal isn't just punishment, it's rehabilitation. It's about trying to guide them toward a better future.
Which brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? Back to Jamal and that young officer. Because this entire system, this whole philosophy, sometimes it all hinges on something incredibly simple. Something personal. It all comes down to the power of one person asking why. So after all of this, the law, the psychology, the whole complicated system, what does it all really boil down to? What's the one thing that can make all the difference? Well, it turns out there's one single factor that can change everything. One caring adult. That's it. One person who decides to look beyond the paperwork, who takes the time to actually ask why. It's that simple. And it's that profound. And think about the stakes here. They could not be higher. That one person can be the deciding factor. They can be the pivot point between a life that's defined by one mistake and a life that's full of potential. I mean, we're talking about the difference between a future criminal and a future college student. So this whole thing leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? Jamal's story, it's not just about the justice system. It's a lesson in empathy for every single one of us. It makes you look at the people in your own life and wonder, who around you needed you to look past the surface? Who needed you to ask why?